Hello, and welcome to the podcast where friends discuss environmental policies from around the planet. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Planet Policy Pals. In fact, our last episode of the series and of the year, I guess. It's kind of exciting. We're all the way down to the end of 2021. Ajwa, how are you feeling?
I'm good. It's been a good year, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to next year. Not with the new variant around, but
oh yeah,
I'm sure we'll get through it.
We'll get through it, guys. Stay strong. I hope you guys are staying safe out there.
And vaccinated.
And vaccinated, yes. We are very pro-vax on this podcast. Last week, we did the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and that was a really fun one. So since, like we said, we love shitting on oil, we thought we'd bring you guys some bite-sized oil spill stories. So this week we have 2 stories for you, and we're just gonna jump right into them. So Ajwa, what story are you gonna give us today?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the very infamous Exxon Valdez oil spill, which was actually a man-made disaster that occurred when Exxon Valdez, which was an oil tanker, it was owned by, obviously, as you guessed, Exxon Shipping Company. It spilled 11 million gallons of crude oil into Alaska, a place that we all love for being pristine. It spilled into Prince William Sound on March 24th in 1989, and it was one of the worst oil spills in U.S. history until the Deepwater Horizon. Obviously, we talked about that. It got its full episode, guys. It deserved it.
Yeah.
The Exxon Valdez oil slick, it covered 1,300 miles of coastline, and it killed hundreds and thousands of seabirds, otters, seals, and whales. It was quite bad. Nearly 30 years later, even now, pockets of crude oil, they remain in some locations. So after the spill, surprisingly, Exxon Valdez returned to service under a different name, and it operated for more than 2 decades as an oil tanker and ore carrier.
Isn't that really shady that they would do that and trick people?
I don't know, man. The oil. You
I
can't
love a
mess with the
rebrand.
oil.
Yeah, can't mess with oil.
Sorry, I refuse to speak on it. So on the evening of March 23rd in 1989, Exxon Valdez left the port of Valdez, Alaska, and it was bound for Long Beach, California, and it had 53 million gallons of crude oil on board. But at 4 minutes after midnight on March 24th, the ship struck Lake Reef, a well-known navigation hazard that people know in Alaska's Prince William Sound. And the impact of this collision, it tore open the ship's hull, which caused about 11 million gallons of crude oil to spill into the water.
I mean, that's a lot of oil, and we've all heard about this oil spill before, or most of us have. But how did they eventually contain it? You know what I mean? What happened?
So their initial attempts, they kind of failed. And in the months that followed, the oil slick obviously spread, and it eventually covered about 1,300 miles of coastline. Investigators actually learned that Joseph Hazelwood, now this is a funny story, the captain of Exxon Valdez, had been drinking at the time.
Oh, wow.
So what he had done was that he allowed an unlicensed third mate to steer the massive ship.
So this is really just top-tier man-made natural disaster right here.
Anyway, March of next year, Hazelwood was actually acquitted of felony charges. He was, however, convicted of a single charge of misdemeanor negligence, but he was fined $50,000 and he was ordered to perform 1,000 hours of community service.
That was it?
Yeah.
For all that, that was like you said, it was the biggest oil spill until we had Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, but they don't make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I guess that's fair.
But the problem is that area, Prince William Sound, it had been a pristine wilderness before the spill happened. And it dramatically changed all of that, right? The spill took a major toll on wildlife. It killed about 250,000 seabirds, 3,000 otters, 300 seals. 250 bald eagles. You think how? And 22 killer whales.
Yeah,
So it kind of hit us right there.
that's pretty awful. Like whales, bald eagles, sea otters in massive numbers.
And not just that, since we love seafood so much, well, we all do, it actually also may have played a role in the collapse of salmon and herring fisheries in that area in the early 1990s.
Oh my God.
Because like fishermen went bankrupt, and the economies of the small shoreline towns, including Valdez and Cordova, they suffered like for the next few years.
That's pretty sad because, I mean, there are a lot of fishing communities over there in those parts of Alaska, and they depend on
Yeah,
that. And Alaskan salmon is delicious, guys. That salmon is good.
yeah. They lost something like $2.8 billion.
Wow.
Actually, a study in 2001, it found that oil contamination that remained, those pre-spill levels didn't recover until 2014, which is like 25 years after the spill.
I mean, that just goes to show you, like, some of these things have serious long-term implications on communities, on species, on the environment as a whole. And I know, every few years, Americans, mostly in Congress versus corporations, debate whether we should be drilling in Alaska. And whenever they do, I'm like, guys, do we not remember Exxon Valdez? We can't have accidents like that up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
A
does.
herring never actually came back.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of man made disasters and oil spills, our last oil debacle of the season is one that truly was in every way man made, the Gulf War oil spill. Just like in the last story you heard from Ajwa, this was truly just people being, I don't know how else to put it, but kind of like dicks. So I don't think that we've really have we done any episodes on the Middle East specifically on our podcast, Ajwa?
I don't think so.
So this is kind of new, yeah. Planet policy, if you will. This oil spill is notable in my mind because it was the result of war and bullshit. It really was. I like to think of it as a bullshit oil spill. Starting in January of 1991, large quantities of oil began to spill into the Persian Gulf. Basically, early reports from Iraqi forces claimed that the spill had been caused by the U.S. sinking 2 oil tankers. That's what they were putting out at first. And people were like, oh, that's awful. No, wrong. Because it was later revealed that in a desperate and, in my personal opinion, foolish military move, Iraqi forces had opened oil valves off the Sea Island pipeline, releasing oil from numerous tankers, which spilled approximately 70,000 to 80,000 tons of oil each day for a week.
That's a lot of oil.
I know. And the reason they did this was because they were trying to impede U.S. troops from attempting beach landings. But in the end, the spill simply resulted in oil being dumped into the Persian Gulf and just freaking ruining everything. It was one of the first times in military history where a natural resource and specifically pollution was used as a tactic of war. And I really don't want us to take that, make that into a habit. But yeah. Many scientists believe it's one of the worst spills in human history, but it's hard to determine that for sure because we still don't know the full scale of this particular spill even today. Despite the initial high estimates, because you got to remember, this is not just military, it's also kind of political, the spill was likely about 4 million US barrels eventually. That's what they guess it was right now. And within the following months of the spill, most cleanup was targeted at recovering oil, because, sweet, sweet oil. And very little actual cleanup was done on Saudi Arabia's highly affected beaches. An initial study in 1993, in fact, found that the spill will not have long-term environmental consequences. But obviously, many studies since then have concluded the opposite, because tell me how they were like, you know what? I know we spilled a shit ton of oil and all this water and all these beaches, but guys, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think we're going to be fine. So
I'm not surprised at all.
I don't know how they thought they would get away with that. I don't know. But anyway, more than 800 oil wells were blown up. Of these, more than 600 caught fire and burned with flames, and about 50 wells gushed oil onto the ground. If you remember from last episode, go listen to it, guys. It was really good. Ajwa did a fantastic storytelling job.
Thank you, thank you.
We talked a little bit about why you don't want crude oil to burn. During the period up to October 1991, all the wells were eventually capped. And of course, we had emissions from this, right? Big thing here is air quality, because a lot of these were catching fire and burning. The soot emissions for the burning oil and gas have been estimated to be about 20,000 tons per day, and the total sulfur dioxide emissions about 24,000 tons per day. I think we've talked a little bit about why sulfur dioxide is bad for you. So, if you're following us, you know that it sucks. The CO2 emissions from the burning oil and gas in Kuwait has been estimated to be about 130 to 140 million tons, which is insane because that corresponds to like 2 to 3% of global annual anthropogenic contribution from the use of fossil and recent fuels. So, 2 to 3%, you're like, that's small. But no, it's not, because that's just in that one small area, that one oil spill. So that's why it's so significant.
Yeah.
And most of the soot particles accumulated between 1,000 and 3,000 meters as far as altitudes go, and very little contamination reached higher than 5,000 meters, which I guess a little better for ozone, but not good for people, because a lot of that soot is not going to spread, but it's going to fall with the rain over that general area, have a lot of acid rain, and it's just not good for the health of people there as well. The high volume of particles in the air had a very pronounced effect on the climate in Kuwait and in neighboring countries. Temperatures were up to 10 degrees Celsius lower than under normal years. And it was just bad. Like, oil and soot was covering this entire area where, like, you have Kuwait, northern Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf. Of course, we had, like, vegetation was suffering, wildlife was exposed. While I did this research, the environmental impact studies were really scattered. It was like people didn't want to put them out there too much. And I guess that's all I'll say. Yeah. So just to remind you guys, like we said last week, oil is bad for fur-bearing animals like sea otters. They're so cute. And for the water repellency of birds' feathers. So it makes it harder for them to survive, and they tend to die. That's why oil spills are really bad for them. And because they can't, it sticks to them, exactly. And it insulates them. It's just not good for them. And of course, like, sea turtles get trapped in oil, and sometimes they'll mistake it for food. You guys, the beautiful sea turtles. Dolphins and whales can inhale oil. You know what? I think that's enough of me talking about why this is bad for animals, guys. I'm getting very emotional. Just in general, we have to be really careful how we're dealing with fossil fuels. Because even when lethal impacts are not observed, oil can make even your fish and your shellfish unsafe for humans to eat. So maybe you don't care about all this wildlife we talk about, but if you listen to us, I hope that you do. Just know that eventually it could get to you as well. And, maybe you at least care about you. You know what I mean? So the organization we want to shout out today is the Government Accountability Project. Big fan. I don't know what's happening, you guys, but in the last 2-3 episodes, the organizations I keep finding are places that I feel like Ajwa would just thrive if she went to work there. If she left me.
Thanks.
But the global leader in whistleblowing advocacy since 1977, and I just love that about them, because I feel like accountability plus drama plus advocacy, it's everything. It's giving me everything I need. In fact, just this year, for the 5th anniversary of the BP oil disaster that we talked about last week, Government Accountability Project released new investigative findings as an addendum to a 2013 report they had. So you should check out that report. The name is very long, but it's called The Deadly Dispersants in the Gulf: Are Public Health and Environmental Tragedies the New Norm for Oil Spill Cleanups? But honestly, if you just go to Government Accountability Project and check BP, you will find this report. And it's an interesting read. I enjoyed it.
So you guys know we have a personal vendetta against oil companies, that get away with bullshit. Also others, but mostly those. And this is the third oil series in this series alone. Like, we're not promising you that we're not going to do more of these. We probably will. But we want to know if you guys have any stories where oil companies were shady in other places, and we will definitely share these. Like, if you send them in, we're searching for those. So please let us know.
Yeah, do let us know. Thank you for joining us for this extra policy discussion. Honestly, we just want to say thank you guys for sticking with us through these first 10 months of our podcast. It's been up and down this year, but it's mostly been up. And we really appreciate you guys. Like we said, this is our last episode of the series and of the year. We've really enjoyed doing this storytime episode, right?
Yes, this was probably my favorite series.
It was fun.
Do let us know what was yours. We would love to know.
We would love to know. So follow us on Twitter, Planet Policy Pal, Instagram, Planet Policy Pals, and like our Facebook page. We will see you guys in the coming new year. Let's all make it there safely. And until then, keep learning, pals.